stakeholders and form the fundamental foundational pillars of the international anti-corruption regime. With 167 state parties, the UNCAC is truly on a road to universality, which I am sure it will reach in the near future. Madam President, corruption has been a matter of discourse within the ALCO since 2002, when the then Secretary General of ALCO, Ambassador Dr. Wafik Kamil, introduced it as an agenda item during ALCO's 41st annual session in Abuja, Nigeria. This coincided with the negotiations at the United Nations General Assembly to adopt the first global legally binding international anti-corruption instrument, which was adopted unanimously in 2003. Since then, the issues embedded in UNCAC has always remained as a subject of concern and discussions to ALCO and its member states, and hence has been deliberated frequently in a number of annual sessions of ALCO. Apart from actively deliberating various anti-corruption strategies undertaken at the national level by its member states at its annual sessions, the ALCO Secretariat has also produced 2 special studies on the subject over the years. The first study, entitled Combating Corruption, a Legal Analysis, was released during the 44th annual session of ALCO held in Nairobi, Kenya in the year 2005. The objective of this study was to create awareness among the ALCO member states and other Asian African countries as to what the phenomena of corruption entailed for their national and economic development. Included within were the salient features of the international anti-corruption instruments developed at the regional and international levels. After the UNCAC came into force in 2005, the Secretariat embarked on a second special study on this issue that culminated in a preparation of rights and obligations under the United Nations Convention Against Corruption that was released in the year 2006. This study focused the areas of critical concern on the efforts of the developing world in the area of anti-corruption and gave a detailed analysis of the nature of obligations of member states while implementing the principles embedded in the UNCAC into their national jurisdictions. Madam President, it is now a matter of great pride for me to mention that along with this year's report of the Secretariat, a sequel to those above-mentioned special studies has also been prepared by the Secretariat, which is contained in ALCO/52/headquarters New Delhi /2013/SD/S11-A. Included within are the details pertaining to the major anti-corruption international events that took place in a particular year, as well as the efforts of the regional forums that work in the area of anti-corruption since 2006. I sincerely hope that this would be of significant benefit to the member states of ALCO. Be that it as may, the report of the Secretariat prepared for this session focuses on 3 important meetings that took place in 2012. The first was the 3rd session of the Implementation Review Group of the UNCAC that was held in Vienna from the 18th to the 22nd of June 2012. It may be recalled that the Implementation Review Group was established to have an overview of the review process in order to identify challenges and good practices and to consider technical assistance requirements in order to ensure effective implementation of the Convention. The second meeting, namely the 6th intersessional meeting of the Open-Ended Intergovernmental Working Group on Asset Recovery, was held in Vienna from the 30th to the 31st of August 2012. This meeting had a thematic discussion on cooperation and confiscation, Article 54, which concerns with mechanisms for recovery of property through international cooperation in confiscation, and Article 55, concerning international cooperation for purposes of confiscation. It also discussed the practical aspects of asset recovery, including challenges and good practice that exist in this area. The third one was the first session of the Open-Ended Intergovernmental Expert Meeting on International Cooperation that was held in Vienna from the 22nd to the 23rd of October 2012. This meeting focused on assisting the developing countries in the area of international cooperation, including assistance in encouraging cooperation among relevant existing bilateral, regional, and multilateral initiatives, which in turn would go a long way from contributing to the implementation of the related provisions of the UNCAC. Madam President, it is my firm belief that the distinguished delegates would use this forum and the expertise of our honored speakers, the panelists who are present today, to discuss all the issues involved in the implementation of the UNCAC with a view to shaping their respective countries' anti-corruption efforts in a way that supports their anti-corruption efforts domestically. I wish all of you a fruitful deliberation and discussion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Feng. I will give the floor now to Dr. Manoj Dwivedi.
Can you change the presentation? I think the wrong presentation has been loaded. Can somebody help me with this? Presentation. This one? No. This one. No. No. This is not there. I have it here. Central Bureau of Investigation, the Directorate of Enforcement, Financial Intelligence Units, Serious Fraud Investigation Office as implementing agencies. We have an independent constitutional body known as Comptroller Auditor General at a federal level for overseeing the accounts of the union and the state governments, and it is accountable to the legislature, which is the backbone of our democracy as far as fiscal administration of the government is concerned. We have various channels of redressal of matters relating to corruption through judiciary also, as a separate independent entity. Besides this, in the recent development of past 1 decade, we can say today India has a very vibrant media and civil society and is empowered with the right of freedom of speech and expression, and active involvement is encouraged. The freedom of expression in India is, I think, far, far more compared to many countries of this world. The recent developments in connection with the movement of a strong and effective ombudsman law is a testimony of the government's continued resolve to recognize and encourage the voices outside the realm of 3 pillars of executive, legislature, and judiciary. And this close consultation is now not an exception, but rather a rule whenever any policy making or rule making is concerned. We have elaborate system of fiscal regulations, budgeting, and auditing. To save time, I'll skip this. Maybe we can go into details later on. We have a Right to Information Act in which all information of public importance, of public and official use is accessible to a common man through this act. And now, with the coming of information technology, we have created systems where this information can be achieved online also through various ministries, central ministries working in Government of India. But then, despite such a robust and vast legal institutional framework, still, I would say there are challenges in combating corruption. The challenges are primarily, there are some gaps in the policies, and there are deficiencies in implementation. So whereas implementation is a continuously evolving mechanism where we have to strengthen our institutions, we have to improve the quality of manpower who is recruited, we have to work at our systems, we have to make them more accountable and transparent. But the framework
works on the policies, and therefore identifying the gaps in the policies and filling up those gaps is a big challenge that we have taken up, and we are working on that. And slowly, I would say that we are evolving into a very strong policy framework which would be capable of handling all the dimensions of corruption. So the various measures to address challenges in combating corruption, I have listed them in the order in which I felt that they are important. First of all, corruption, the most important thing for corruption is to prevent corruption. Now, to prevent corruption, I think when it comes to public service, if our public service delivery is streamlined, if it is systematic, it works on proper systems which are more accountable, which are efficient, which have time-bound restrictions on them, then we would be able to deliver the services and leave little scope for corruption. And for this, a bill called the Right of Citizens for Time-Bound Delivery of Goods and Services and Redressal of Their Grievances bill, it was introduced in 2011. It is under active deliberation of our legislature, and in the in near future, we are hopeful that this will be a full-fledged act ensuring that the public services are delivered to the common man, to the public at large, with proper laid down systems and procedures and time-bound restrictions. Some of the federal state governments have gone ahead and implemented such similar act in their states, and now their public service deliveries are being made under the framework of those acts. So many state governments have taken a lead, and I think the central government will also very soon have this act. This will definitely make a dent on the scope of corruption and make our systems more accountable. Then public procurement is one area in which we see that this scope of corruption is the highest. To streamline this and to back it up with legal legislation, a public procurement bill has been introduced in 2012. It is under active discussion of the legislature, and I'm sure that very soon we will have such a legal framework which will not only streamline the public procurement procedures and systems, but also give a lot of legislative frameworks to act upon so that it leaves little scope for corruption in the areas of procurement, especially the public procurements that are handled in government. Money laundering is a very important aspect. Recently, a bill was introduced for amending the Money Laundering Act, and these amendments are in line with the standards set by the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. The international forums created some standards, some basic principles on this aspect. Those principles have been adopted, and the amendments that have been introduced to the Money Laundering Act of 2002 has now made it stronger and more effective in handling the money laundering aspects. Whistleblower protection is a very important aspect. Although we have a very good Right to Information Act, which provides access to all public information to public at large, to a common man, but at the same time, we also need certain laws to protect the whistleblowers who pass out some information, who are able to give some information related to the organization, to the department, to government functioning, and they need certain protections, certain protocols have to be laid down, and certain immunities have to be introduced. For that, a bill which is Protection to Persons Making Disclosure Bill has been introduced. It is again under active consideration of our legislature, and soon I think we will have a legislative framework which will provide protection to the whistleblowers, and in that way strengthen revealing informations which help in combating corruption. The judiciary, as I said, is an independent entity. It is one of the pillars of our democracy, but it also needs to be accountable. The judiciary also needs to be more transparent, more accountable, and therefore Judicial Standards and Accountability Bill has been introduced, and this bill will soon be a legislation which will allow us to keep checks and balances on our judiciary also. So this would go a long way in maintaining more accountability and transparency in functioning of judiciary.